Okay, great. I'd like to invite Gemma Coleman up to come. So Gemma is the content coordinator and editor at Improve Veterinary Education UK. I'll let you introduce your talk. Thanks, Gemma.
Thank you. So firstly, I'll introduce myself. I'm Gemma Coleman. I'm a veterinary surgeon, qualified some time ago now, and since 2022 I've been working at Improve Veterinary Education as part of the UK content team. So in this presentation we will be exploring active learning activities in postgraduate education, strengthening clinical reasoning, transfer and engagement. So I'm going to stop short of making you all stand up and do star jumps, but this presentation hopefully will outline how we have integrated active learning in our postgraduate certificate programs. We've not done this alone, so working alongside me, Aidan, Sonia, Ebba and Pablo have been integral to getting this launched. So the background, many online programs, including some of our own that we've reflected on, have relied on long video-centric delivery that promotes only passive consumption and low transfer learning. In contrast, in the medical education and health professions, we've seen that active learning actually improves achievement. It reduces failure rates and corrects the illusion of learning that we can have when participating in polished lectures. So the ICAP framework predicts a graded benefit in which learning outcomes strengthen as engagement shifts from passive to active to constructive and finally to interactive modes, which is precisely the spectrum of competencies that we as veterinary surgeons need in practice. So what were our aims? We aim to implement a cross-program framework of active learning activities. And these were designed to move learners from merely watching towards doing, thinking, debating and creating, and thereby strengthening their diagnostic reasoning, decision-making under uncertainty and real-world transfer, whilst also sustaining motivation in online formats. So in addition to sound pedagogical foundations, we firmly believe that learning and online learning should be fun. It should be practical and engaging, and you'll see how we've tried to integrate this into our suite of ALAs. So I'm going to go through some examples of the ALAs that we've created, and this is going to be a whistle-stop tour because I'm conscious of time. But if anybody has any particular interest in anything that we talk about today, please reach out to me afterwards and I can happily talk to you at length about any one of these. So the first two that we're going to talk about here are error management training and reverse engineering of the clinical case. And these two focus on some wise words that somebody said, much cleverer than me, said, which is error is inevitable, but harm is not. It's what we do when an error is made and how we learn and reflect and grow from that that becomes important. And that's what we're trying to integrate into these courses. So in error management training, this ALA, we present cases that are intentionally designed with ambiguity, where we expect learners to make mistakes, and then we analyze and improve and plan outcomes. In reverse engineering of a clinical case, you start at the end. So we present the outcome, which sometimes is good, but often is a negative outcome. And the task is to deconstruct the case from final diagnosis and think about the clinical reasoning that got to that point, and effectively a root cause analysis that we might have participated in a M&M rounds in practice. The idea is to identify the critical decision nodes that affected the outcome and think about and reflect on how, if the same case presented, we could do that better in the future. So we have a visual synthesis challenge, and this is where learners will build concept maps or decision trees from a blank canvas. They'll then compare these to an expert gold standard and be able to reflect on how what they have designed and built differs or is similar to a specialist or a subject matter expert's example. In the interactive clinical cases, we have branching decisions with consequences, which emphasize reassessment loops and replicate real-world consequences and scenarios. And earlier we heard a little bit about learning that we've taken from aviation, and we have produced an activity designed around an active checklist. These are procedural checklists, so normally for technical skills, which are used as dynamic practice and assessment tools with targeted feedback. We have an activity called Human versus AI, and this is where learners will contrast the algorithmic outputs with expert judgment. The aim isn't to guess which one is AI and which one is human, but it's to justify the divergences and converge on a safe, evidence-based plan. Now, I should say that when we talk about AI in our educational tools, the AI that we're using as part of these activities, either to provide feedback or to generate content in this case, has been built and designed specifically for us. It is firewalled, it is protected from the wider internet. We feed the input, and the input that we feed is peer-reviewed literature, validated by a human and by a veterinarian. So we're not just using ChatGPT. In consensus and controversies, we have designed an ALA to encourage learners to appraise guidelines and competing protocols, and to articulate defensible positions when put in positions of uncertainty. We have a clinical analysis ALA where learners make a critical appraisal of multimodal clinical data. So that might be, for example, imaging, laboratory trends, flowcharts or risk scores. And learners in this scenario will move from observation and to interpretation, and then to action planning, documenting their assumptions and thresholds for intervention. We've got a clinical debate and strategic communication ALA where learners engage in moderated debates and management options, which might include referral timing or client communication strategies. And they're given feedback on clarity, evidence use, and professional conduct. And finally, we implement a virtual journal club where learners engage in an AI-assisted, faculty-moderated appraisal of recent articles from 3 complementary lenses. So we look at those articles from the eyes of an experienced clinician who is focused on how that is valid and applicable to their general practice, from an academic clinician whose focus might be on design, bias, and alignment with the literature, and finally from a statistician who would prioritize the methods, effect sizes, and assumptions. So tools can include a PICO extraction, brief risk of bias checklist, and closing clinical takeaway for practice. So these ALAs aren't delivered alone. We deliver them in addition to a whole series of other material, but most importantly, they're supported by concise 10 to 15-minute video lessons which feed each ALA. They're aligned with the learning outcomes, and we have clear rubrics for the design, psychologically safe climates. So if you're asking students to make mistakes and reflect on those mistakes, you have to do that in a supportive environment, which we've worked hard to integrate throughout these courses. And we have personalised feedback in addition to the AI feedback that they get for each of the ALAs from the course director, which is implemented midway through and at the end of the programme. So the ALA suite is defined and documented and standardised for faculty deployment. So our outcomes will be evaluating learning by tracking performance on applied and clinical tasks, diagnostic accuracy, and awareness of cognitive biases. We're going to look at learner self-efficacy and the perceived usefulness of feedback, learner engagement and retention, so for example, on-time submissions and completion rates. We'll be monitoring adherence to rubrics, the depth of quality of the learner-generated artefacts, such as decision maps and management plans, and the uptake of the mentoring touchpoints. So we anticipate that the ALA framework will yield stronger transfer to practice, clearer reasoning under pressure, more durable knowledge, and greater professional resilience than video-only delivery. So in conclusion, replacing basic watch and recall formats with structured ALA framework turns online delivery into coached practice, which we've touched upon earlier today. And learners must analyse, evaluate and create, and then receive timely feedback. And this is specific to what they have inputted. This approach is scalable, is faculty-friendly, and directly aligned with the cognitive and non-technical skills demanded in modern veterinary practice. Thank you for listening.
Thanks, Gemma. I think we have a question here. We got a microphone? Sorry. No, thanks, Deb.
Thank you, that was really fascinating, and I am really interested in reverse engineering of clinical cases. 2 bits to it though, how into that decision-making tree can we bring the human factors side? So how can we really be thinking about things like fatigue, not eating, which is what we often do. And the second thing is, in the veterinary profession, both when we give feedback and when we think about reverse engineering of these things, it's often around the negative. So okay, instead of reverse engineering clinical cases where there's been an error, how about we reverse engineer successful cases? What can we reflect and learn upon from that so that we can start to build this much more positive learning environment?
Yeah, that's a fantastic point, and it's one that we've recognised, and we have, as I said, we have integrated some positive outcomes as well, because I think it's just as important to reflect on what we've done well. I think as veterinary surgeons, we're all potentially at risk of being quite focused on what we've done wrong and going home at the end of the day thinking, oh, I wish I'd done that in that particular case, whereas actually we should go home and think, you know what, I saw 40 cases today and 39 of them are brilliant. My outcome's great. Maybe I made an error with one of them and I could improve on that in the future. But that shouldn't be the thing that keeps us up at night. It often is, but it shouldn't. And so, yeah, you're right. We absolutely are trying to integrate in that. And it brings me on to one of the other things that we're working with psychologists as part of these courses and how we produce them. And it's fundamentally important to me that we have a growth climate, that we learn and grow from our mistakes, but we do that in a safe way, and that our learners are supported and guided, and that they feel comfortable and happy when they're participating in this course. So it's really important and integral to what we're doing. Thank you for that.
Gemma. Okay, I think that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Great, thank you.